Welcome to the Lab Report, a new series produced by Cincinnati Lab Theater. Each episode, we will explore different topics regarding theater, featuring lab company members and special guest artists. Enjoy. Welcome to episode 7 of the Lab Report, Audience Participation. I am your host, Tori Pate. In this episode, some of our past audience members share with me their experiences seeing new works and participating in our post-show talkback process. Enjoy. Okay, welcome this evening. I am so glad you are with us this evening. Let's get to some introductions. First, I have Ed Cohen. Then I have Elaine Eckstein, Maddie O'Connell, and Kim O'Connell. Tonight, we are going to get the audience members' perspective on seeing new works and what it's like to go to the theater and see live theater, and how those experiences have affected them in any way. So my first question is, we at Cincinnati Lab, we deal completely with new works. We're playwright centric. We work with the playwrights to develop their plays. All of you have seen shows with Cincinnati Lab. What do you enjoy about seeing new works?
Well, it's just a new take on whatever, and it's just exciting to see something that's in production or in process. And what's even more interesting is that sometimes you get to see them later, after they've matured, like a fine cheese. It's always an interesting experience. Even if you hate the play, it's an interesting experience.
I've liked how the fact that it isn't a finished product gives it a little more freedom, I think, for the conversation. The playwright hasn't, and the director haven't finalized it yet, and they're getting an opportunity to get a kind of feedback that you would normally, like if you're writing a book, you'd get it from an editor and from different readers. This way you're getting it from audience members, and sometimes educated audience members. And you get a point of view that maybe just didn't occur to you, or something. You get a sense of whether things you're trying are working or they're not, or they're having not the effect that you wanted them to have, or maybe they're having a better effect than you wanted. So it's kind of exciting to catch things in the early stages of it. And it's neat. Cincinnati Lab Theater was one of the few venues in Cincinnati that lets that happen. There's you see that happen academically sometimes, but not so much on stages, and it's a little more exciting in some ways because there's so much uncertainty to it. You're not just reviewing it, you're part of the process in a small way.
I'm not much of a routine type person, so new is good for me. And I guess when I think of any new works, I enjoy the new journey, the surprise ending, the things that I don't expect. So I'm probably less likely to see things I've seen before over and over again. I'm more the audience member that seeks out the things I haven't seen before.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just a huge fan of supporting artists. Like as an artist myself, I know how good it feels to get an audience, and have that feedback. And with Lab especially, we're like supporting local artists, which is even more great, I think. Yeah, it's just very exciting to see something for the first time, and usually they're really creative. Sometimes it's not very mainstream, and I really like that too. and the themes. Sometimes they take place in a more contemporary time, and they cover more contemporary subject matter. I enjoy that too.
Say that's a good point. That it's not mainstream. You may never see this on Broadway because backers aren't going to leap at this. But this is something that you see in smaller theaters. You see in process, and it's not going to be on television. It's not going to be on Broadway. It's not going to be at the Aronoff. But it's something unique that you're going to participate in.
Tori, you had asked before about your people's reactions to live theater. You guys did a show, and I cannot remember the title of it. It was done on Zoom, I think in the fall.
Mhm.
And, it had the challenges of doing a show on Zoom from different locations. But the thing that I've noticed during the pandemic, because people have tried a lot of online things, they tried to stream things. I directed something and I filmed it and then streamed it, as opposed to doing it by Zoom, because it took place outside with two people, so it was easy to do that way.
Mhm.
But the thing that I've really noticed is how important the intimacy of being there live is. That you don't get that from any. I think it's very unexpected to people that just putting a camera in front of people on Zoom or even in front of a performance, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And you don't get that. I mean, even on a different scale, even when you watch like a great performances where there's a great video of something, the original production, it isn't the same. I remember there's a play that was on Broadway a couple of years ago, Indecent, this Paula Vogel play. And I saw it on Broadway. It was one of the most overwhelmingly moving, emotional things I've ever seen. And they did a great performances video of it on Broadway. And it's great. If you get a chance to see it, watch it, but it isn't exactly the same. There's something missing. And I think that something missing thing has just become so apparent during the pandemic,
Mhm.
that the intimacy of being in the space with people. And, Elaine, you've done a lot of dance in your career, and I can imagine with dance, it's really important. I mean, you need that proximity to the people.
You need the 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
So do you think that's it about that's the reason we love to go to the theater, that it's that shared experience of the audience, because it is such a fleeting thing. It is just a moment in time, and only the people who were in that audience with you had that same experience. So you think that might be part of what our need to go to the theater might be?
I think there's an energy when you're physically there. I think the actors play off of the energy they're feeling from the audience. And because it's live, it changes every night. So the production isn't the same on any given night. So I just feel like, I've been to shows where there is a small audience and that doesn't react much. And then I've been to a show where there's a larger audience that really reacts, and the actors perform differently. They get energy from the different audiences that they perform for. So yeah, I think that we're missing a lot while we're not able to be there live.
I think some of the stuff that Cincinnati Lab does, for instance, you can do more. You might lean toward more minimalistic kinds of shows. You can't video one and have it have the same impact.
Yeah.
But if you sit in a small theater, a small thrust theater, or a very small proscenium, you can get an incredible emotional impact from a small show that has almost no tech, no set at all, because the actors can make the kind of the emotional and physical connection to the audience. I think Maddie said that too. I mean, you have that connection that it's unique, I think, to live theater.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. I mean, during the pandemic, it's made you think about it a lot. And a lot of people have come up with very clever things to do, ways of dealing with distancing and masks and everything. But, theater has been, I was thinking the theater has really not changed very much since the Greeks. I mean, it's always kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get on a stage, you put people around it, and you do it live. And it's always been something like that. Sometimes the tech's better. Sometimes you got a bigger theater. These days you can do more stuff with lights and more comfortable seats and stuff, but it isn't different. And that whole idea, that's why it's kind of existed as its own thing. It's different than painting. It's different than film, much different than filmmaking.
I think the importance of it is that everything's happening in the moment. People have already said that, but with a painting, you're looking at something from a distance that someone made in the past. Everything is being created right then and there, and that shared experience, like you said, Tori, is so important. The empathy, the emotions, the shared emotions that you feel going on that journey with the characters in their story, getting a slice of their life. It's so different. I mean,
Well, I think
I'm
what you said too before is that it can be it's dynamic because it's always different. No two performances are ever identical. And sometimes you think something, you think you said it because you've rehearsed it that way, but you just don't get the same connection for some reason with the audience. A joke isn't as funny. A song isn't as resonant. Something's different. Sometimes people go up on lines. I mean, tech doesn't work. Things happen. It's so it's so alive as compared to film, which is no different than a painting, really.
One thing I think that live theater is a collaborative between the audience and the performer, and the audience frequently brings out something different in you every night. That's part of the reason it's different every night. So there's no way you can do that on film or on video or on Zoom.
Okay, so my next part is we at Lab, we utilize the Liz Lerman critical response method when working with our playwrights. And so it's all about asking questions and finding out what resonates with you. And the final part of that process is our talkbacks at the end of the show, so that we can get the audience's take on the performance they have just seen. So I want you to think about the first time you ever experienced one of our Lab talkbacks and what you thought about it. Tell me what it was like. Was it something you expected? Was it a little intimidating? What were your thoughts on the first time you experienced that talkback?
I think for me, it was one of Elizabeth Harris's plays that she was working on. It was interesting to see it. It was very, had a very high concept to it, as I remember. A little abstract, I think, in terms of its flow. The thing about the talkbacks, I like talkbacks, but my experience just has been for talkbacks with Lab and with other places, is that audiences just a little shy about being negative. And even if they want to be, not that they ought to be, I mean, maybe they really like it, but sometimes it kind of makes it bland. The criticism, I really liked it when such and such happened. I thought it was kind of interesting when such and such happened. And instead of, that whole concept of doing it like that just didn't work for me. And here's why, and things like that. I think people are they like the idea of it. I like the idea of it. And I think it's real productive if you're in the middle of a playwriting process to get that live feedback, because what we all were saying before, the audience is really an important part of it. I think the audience has to be honest about it for that to really work.
I'm guessing, since you all are theater professionals and I am truly just a theater lover, and I'm thinking that a lot of times the audience members don't want to say too much negative or even positive because we don't think we have the qualifications. Like, if you just want our opinion or how something felt, but we're probably sitting there waiting for those of you who do this for a living to step in and do that, because we're there more for the entertainment and you all are there more for the things you all know that dig much deeper into a theatrical production than those of us that are just there to enjoy the show or learn about something new or dig into some concept. I love talkbacks to learn more about what they were trying to do or someone else's perspective, but I know I probably wouldn't think I'm qualified to tell them that something was wrong unless they just want to know if it moved me or something like that.
I think that's legitimate. You know, did it work for you? And whatever your take on it was, you know, and the playwright may have had a totally different concept to begin with, but that's okay. You know, it's coming back to him, and this is what the audience sees and hears. This is how they feel about it.
Well, and maybe what you're saying is the majority of that audience may be theater goers that aren't in the business, right? So maybe they are looking for our opinion or our feedback even more because
Sure.
there's
You're
more people that
the
aren't in
paying
the business
guests.
yeah.
I think Elaine's right, because I think I've been to talkbacks like at Ensemble Theater, and that audience isn't, you know, there may be people in there that they're involved in theater, but mostly not. They're just looking and those plays are already set. But they want to hear, did it work?
Yeah.
And I think they want the honesty. I mean, if it worked for you, say so. And if it didn't work for you, it's important to say so. Because even if the author doesn't change it, that may, for the producers, that may affect the kind of material they produce later. They say, you know, we thought this was a good idea, but we had all these audience members that just didn't like it, or it just didn't move them, and we thought it was going to be whatever. No, I wouldn't diminish your opinion, Kim. I think
No.
because I think mostly that's the opinion they're looking for.
Well,
Yeah.
when you said people, excuse me, are hesitant, I'm like, well, why are they, or why would I be? And that entered my head. So maybe, Tori, what Lab could do if they are getting hesitation for people to share is to, you know, just make it known that you want to hear really from the audience as much as any theater professional, because that input is, you know, almost like the layman's view, and that is helpful in shaping where this thing goes next. But I do wonder if some people are thinking what I was, you know, when you asked the question, that's what entered my head. It's like, well, do I think I should? So anyway, I think that you're right. The audience is important to deciding what to do next, and encouraging them maybe more to open up would help get more of that feedback.
And sometimes, as someone who works in the theater a fair amount, a lot of times I'll look at a show, and I sometimes give the performers technical or practical aspect, and it's not about the work itself. I always say, I cannot tell you how many times I have said this at talkbacks is, have you thought about actually putting this on stage? You know, a lot of particularly beginning playwrights will do things that are really episodic. It goes from here to here to here to here to here. And maybe that works on television, but that's going to be kind of hard to do on a stage. And, you know, how much pyro do you really need to get this on? You know, let's think about this. Is this doable? And if it is, in what context? Would you be able to sell this play to a high school? Would it go to Broadway? Would it work at the Playhouse in the Park? You know, just practical things. And almost, that may be a little petty on some people's point of view, but yeah, if you're going to get this produced, you got to think about that.
I like it talkbacks too, but it does let you kind of get a view of the process that you don't usually get. And even if it's apparently if it's very early in the process, where the playwright is trying to answer some of those questions Elaine's posing, like, how do I make this into a play, and not just a bunch of ideas and a bunch of scattered scenes. And we put it out there, and the best way to find out, well, let's give it a shot. Put it out there, have people come look at it, get some feedback, and then you go back to your computer and you rewrite it. I like that. I mean, I think that that's different. The experience in that and being asked for the commentary afterwards is different than just going to see a play. Whereas I'm not going to critique it. I'm not going to review it. You know, and I've had that experience before where I've been asked to review something for somebody, and it's a whole different experience. Most of the time I prefer not doing that. It's like, just go and enjoy the play. Just go watch it. Just see if you like it.
I like talkbacks for digging deeper into the context or the themes. You know, if there are things that I didn't catch the first time, these little details. I love hearing from the actors and the director and the playwrights and all the creative team, because then I can understand better what the intentions were. I think sometimes I'm like, wow, I really enjoyed that. That really touched me, but I can't really figure out why. And I can't figure out what exactly it was about. Like I have trouble thinking. but but yeah, I like hearing from them because then I can have a better understanding of the story and then like it even more and appreciate it even more.
So because so many theaters do talkbacks, and Ed touched on this a little bit, what is kind of the difference between the way Lab's talkbacks work and the way other theaters? What are kind of the main differences that you've noticed between the two different styles of talkbacks?
Well, to me, like when you go to an ensemble theater, they're not interested in changing the play. They are, in fact, not necessarily interested in the comments one way or another, as far as the actors, but they're there to kind of, I think they do them to kind of enhance the experience of the audience. It gives them another more insight into the play. They feel it's kind of interesting to talk to actors they just saw in a play, then see them off stage out of costume. A lot of people think that's really cool, and they really like that experience. Whereas with Lab, the entire purpose of the organization is to help playwrights develop their work. So you're not just getting so much an audience reaction. It's like your organization and the playwrights are looking for something from the talkback. They want something from the talkback. Whereas I think the audience members and the other ones, they're the ones getting the thing from the talkback. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think at all talkbacks, one of the things as an audience member experiencing the talkbacks, you have the opportunity to see how different people interpreted the same thing you just saw. You know, and some people have a totally different take on what you thought it was, or how you felt about it. And I always find that very interesting. But you're right. I think that the purpose of most of the talkbacks, the Lab, is to help the playwright.
But I think that really is interesting, Elaine, about how you're sometimes I find myself surprised that some audience members had a completely different take on something about the play than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, and half the time I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm wrong. It isn't like, maybe I just really didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And that they're right, that's more connected to what the author was trying to do or what the actors were trying to do. And it's legitimate either way. But
sure,
sometimes I'm really surprised in the talkbacks. I have found the talkbacks sometimes help me understand the play better. That there's things that, that first impression, it's all kind of in your head. But then when you're with other people and you're breaking down little things, all of a sudden maybe the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh yeah, that's what that was supposed to be. Okay, now I get it. And in a good way, usually in a good way. I mean, not, oh, I didn't understand any of that. That's terrible.
I do think some of what we get out of a talkback is similar to seeing a show more than once, because when you do see something 2 and 3 times, you're like, I didn't notice this the first time I saw it. And wow, that one line changed this whole thing that I didn't see the first time I saw it. So I feel like the talkback helps you get some of those tidbits that you missed the first go round, because those other perspectives or things people bring up or the actors bring up or the director brings up helps you get even more out of it than you would have if you only get to see it one time.
As I'm typically a director, and I think if I were a lab theater playwright or director listening to that, and I heard 5 different people get 5 different impressions from the same scene, that tells me I didn't direct it right. That I didn't direct it to get that whatever I was trying to do didn't work. That it should be more focused than that. Maybe whether it's your blocking or how you've directed the actors to do the dialogue or whatever, because if you're getting, unless it's just so open-ended that every is just the way it is, I think that the intent of the play and the intent of the director is to get a specific response. And if you're not getting that, I think getting that from getting an audience talk back where you're getting lots of different people saying, well, that's not how I saw that scene. Well, I didn't get that at all. I didn't notice that at all in the first place. Well, that may mean, well, maybe I didn't block it right to get focus in the right place and things like that. And it's real valuable. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, I got to go back and look at that scene, because if I'm getting 5 different reactions, maybe we got to think about it. They could all be legitimate, but it's like, it may not be what the author and the play and the director want to do.
Well, that again, then you're talking about how collaborative theater is. It's not just the playwright, it's the director and it's the actor and it's the audience all together.
Yep.
And I think, you're right. The director should probably narrow things down, but when push comes to shove, I think there will always be differently nuanced interpretations that you'll hear in the audience.
I think you're right. I think that's right. That's always right.
That's always going to happen to some
Right.
degree. But you make a good point that the director should be honing it, I guess would be the word.
Well, I don't think there's a right final product, and that's but the playwright and the director in collaboration with the actors are trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do. They want to accomplish it, and if they find out in this talkback that that isn't the reaction we were going for. It's not like you couldn't go for the other reaction, but if that's not the one they want, and they have control over it because they're the ones that put the thing together, I think the talkback's valuable. It can be a really helpful way of just kind of getting feedback that you don't usually get. I mean, sometimes, and Elaine, you've probably done this too, in the rehearsal room, you'll bring in another friend who's a director or another choreographer or somebody, say, would you watch this? Tell me what you think. Like halfway through the rehearsals, not at the end, but early enough that it's time to do something about it.
Mhm.
You're not just looking for compliments. You're looking for somebody to come in and give you an opinion. And I think those talkbacks, because you're doing them in the development of the play, that's just like that. You're looking to get feedback for the creative people to help them focus on what they're doing.
We have done with Lab, there have been several plays that have had staged readings and then have gone on and we have produced them fully. Have any of you had the opportunity to see any of those shows that you've seen one iteration of it and then a couple years later you've seen it again?
I saw one of Elizabeth's plays in the Fringe Festival once, that then I think it developed into something more full-blown with Lab. And there was some other, I don't know if it was her play, or I know Bob Allen was in it, but I apologize for drawing a blank because being
Sorry.
an old man, I can't remember anything. But but I do remember seeing a staged version done twice and thinking that the second one was sharper. So that whatever you had done, whatever comments had come through it, it seemed more developed. It seemed more more polished. That the clear decisions had been made
Mhm.
by both the playwright and the director than in the last time I'd seen it. Yeah, it was from for that little vague memory. It seems like whatever you guys are getting out of it's valuable.
Excellent. Um, so we know that the talkback experience can be very valuable to our playwrights, and even our directors and our actors. What do you think the audience gets out of it? We've touched on it a little bit, but what specifically, as an audience member, do you get out of the talkback?
I mean, I said this earlier, but just a deeper understanding of the play and the intentions.
I think Kim kind of said this, but I think just general people who aren't directly involved in theater find theater to be really mysterious. That it's like, it's just, they don't know how do you memorize all those lines? And they don't know how you do it, and how the process, that is a process, and how much training goes into it and how it works. And I think they're fascinated to ask questions to kind of this behind the scenes. It's more like a behind the scenes thing. I think they're less interested in the play sometimes than in the performances and the performers, and seeing them, that they just saw them in a show, and then if they've changed costumes, now like they were a quote unquote real person, and I think they're fascinated by that. It's sort of like meeting a celebrity on the street in a whole different scale, maybe, but it's kind of like staring at the stage door outside of a Broadway theater and seeing the actors come by and talking to them for a few minutes. It's like a crazy experience that connects you to them more as people, and kind of makes you appreciate what they did. That they're not, that this is just some normal person. They're not at all like that character they just played, as if they should be. I think regular normal people are fascinated by that process. They get a lot out of that.
And I think it's a connection. I mean, the theaters fill up when they feel connected to the different directors, the different actors, especially when we're talking about local theater. I think some people go to certain shows because they like who's in it, and that draws them to go see it, because not necessarily because of that certain story, but they like watching that person because maybe it's some talk back. They listen to them answer some questions, and that makes them more interested in live theater. And I think all of us that really like theater are trying to get people to like it more and go more and fill up the seats and buy the tickets. And so I think when there's that connection, and a talkback really does help bring the people that are part of the creative and production team closer to the audiences, and that then causes the audience to go to another show and buy more tickets. And it's a great way, I think, to get those who aren't in the business more involved and interested in seeing more.
I enjoy, I think a lot of enjoy seeing different people's take on the same work. I find that very interesting myself. And I think you're all right. I think there are many aspects of why people enjoy that, but that's kind of what I enjoy from it.
All right. So to kind of close out this evening, I really enjoyed this conversation we've had. I'd like to hear from all of you. What are your plans for the theater when we can finally be back in person? Are you going to go see everything you possibly can? Are you going to pick and choose? What's going through your mind when we can finally all get back into a theater together? What is your reaction going to be?
I will cry of joy. I mean, I just watching things that my peers are doing over Zoom or, YouTube or any other streaming platform. I just get so sad. Like I watch this awesome play. And the whole time I was like, wow, this would have been so much better in person.
Mm.
I would have felt so much more engaged. I would have laughed at the jokes. I would have been able to see better. I'd be using my eyes instead of some crappy campus camera. So, yeah, I will definitely see everything all the time. That's what we did before the pandemic, my mom and I. Really, like when I was still living at home, we would see 5 shows a week for sure. We would seek things out. So yeah, I miss it. I miss going on that journey with the actors. And I miss supporting artists. I miss seeing my friends in person. I miss hugging people after shows. I miss congratulating people in person, all that stuff.
You know, when you talk to people who aren't involved in theater, the pandemic has been so big and the effect has been so big that you mentioned theater, and I say, well, almost overnight, all theater in the United States stopped, from high school theater to Broadway. It all just stopped, and it's not come back, and it's going to be the last thing that comes back because of the way it's done. How many students of ours and friends in New York have moved out of New York because they can't afford it, and they can't, like, even their second jobs, their supplemental jobs went away because a lot of them were in hospitality and food service and stuff. So the simple answer to your question is I miss the rehearsal room. I love being in rehearsals. I love directing actors. I love the experience of it. I miss it. I mean, it's been so, we were trying to count how many times have I driven at night in the last year. And it's been like 4, like nothing. I bought a new car last March and it has 4,500 miles on it. And it's just, I miss that. And Maddie talked about, hugging people. I miss it because it's a warm group of people and it's an emotional thing to do. And you miss it because everything's now sanitized. You're all at arm's length, you're masked up, you got cameras on you. It's not the same thing. I mean, I think given time, we could make it something really interesting, but it's not the same thing. And I miss just being around other actors and artists and putting a show together and having that experience, even more so than the shows themselves.
I agree, Ed. I love rehearsing. I mean, it's so, you're just at your most creative. Working with the director and the other actors and all the things that come out and the things that you try and the things that work and the things that don't work. And it's just an exciting, for me, very exciting experience. And I miss that a lot. Yeah.
What's coming to mind for me is collaborating with no restraints. Being in
Right.
college in a pandemic is, especially as an acting major, it's so rough. I feel bad for the freshmen because they don't know anything different. I had my experiences before the pandemic.
I feel like kids like you have been shortchanged badly.
Oh yeah.
It's not like being an English major. There's some things like, Psych 101 actually works pretty well on Zoom.
Right.
It's probably better than it did when you went to the big lecture hall. But musical theater performance doesn't. People who teach viewpoints, that's pretty rough. Dance, how do you do it? I mean, people are doing it.
Yeah.
They're doing it. They're figuring it out, but it's not the same as getting in the room and you go up to the student and you help reposition their body and you do it with your hands, and it's very hands-on because that's the way it's taught. You can make do, but it's not the same thing. I miss it.
Yeah, I think when I think about Maddie's school, because I agree, they're missing something. In her first show this fall, she was cast in. You guys did it by Zoom, and the cast didn't get close. Like, you all know how close the creative team gets. So then they did one outside, which was kind of neat. Your second show this fall, right, where the cars pulled up like a drive-in theater and the performers were outside and we were all in our cars. So that was pretty neat. and they did it outside, but you still couldn't get totally close because they needed to stay separate from each other. So now this one you're doing, it sounds like you're in a black box, but you're all masked, and it just, they're trying all different kinds, right? And it's hard. But what will I do when we can all go back? I will be in the theater every night. I hope there's not a dark night, because we have missed so many things that we normally like to see. And I mean, when Maddie talked about how many we try to see on weekends, if we could do an afternoon and an evening, there's just so many shows in Cincinnati that we always want to try to get in. And so as soon as it's all open, and we've done a good amount of watching the things that have been online, but live theater is just, you just can't replace it
I-
for those
and I
of
think-
us who are really into it.
And I think it will come back big.
Mhm.
Like, a lot of people are skeptical of it because they're nervous. But once people feel it's safe, people are dying for it. Not just theater, but a lot of things. But it's in that mix of things people want to do. Because I think not having it, you take it for granted. And what you're seeing with those drive-in things and the Zoom stuff is that you got a lot of creative people involved, and they're figuring out stuff you can manage to do. And there are things about it that are really interesting and pretty admirable. But given a choice, 100% of them would be in a theater doing it on stage. And because it's better.
Yeah.
That's what live theater is.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Ed and Elaine and Maddie and Kim. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of the Lab Report, and we hope to see you in the theater again real soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.